Do P.L. Travers and Walt Disney share any similar childhood experiences? And how did those formative years inform their storytelling?
That's a lovely question because they did, of course, have difficult childhoods. Walt Disney had an abusive father and a violent father whom he loved very much. And P.L. Travers had an alcoholic father who was emotionally abusive, whom she loved very much. So they were both wounded children and carried those wounds with them for life, but they dealt with those wounds in very different ways. And one of the great pieces of kind of collective artistry about this movie, which has been such a joy to make, is the poster, because the poster is the two characters, but the shadows of the characters are Mary Poppins and Mickey Mouse. And there's something so truthful about that, because to me, the creation of those characters was of vital importance to the survival of those two people. And they kind of take the wounded child, the characters take the wounded child by the hand and slowly and gently try to draw them out into the light and say, you know, it's all right, the world is safe, really. You know, those characters made the world safe for the wounded children inside those two artists.
Do you believe that it's an extraordinary feat that this movie actually got made, given the difficulty of P.L. Travers to relinquish the rights?
Well, it was indeed a great feat because it took him 20 years to get the rights. And actually, it was finally, and in the end, economic necessity that won him those rights. P.L. Travers had written and written, but the money was beginning to run out. She was going on to the end of her life. She was writing other books, but they weren't nearly so successful. And she had a house that she loved and that she wanted to keep. And I think that whilst it may sound unromantic, it's a very important point to make, because a woman alone with no husband and no family to help her, she needed to earn money in order to survive. And this film made it possible for her.
Can you speak a little bit about the context for P.L. Travers' childhood and how that eventually translated into the story of Mary Poppins?
Well, her childhood was spent in Australia. And she said right from the start she knew that she had to get out as soon as she could. She did not feel a kinship with that land, which is odd, because she became absolutely obsessed with myth cycles later on in her life. And of course, the original peoples of Australia are the greatest storytellers on the planet. In our race, they're the masters. And so it's strange that she felt such a resistance to it. But it was her father, again, who instilled in her a passion for Irish myth and the Celtic soul, and that made her want the fogs and the mystery of Ireland. And so that's where she took herself as soon as she could, and where she met Yeats, and she created an atmosphere around herself of intellectualism and poetry, and I think she felt that saved her from her rather snobby response to her Australian upbringing.
How is the film related to the challenges of fulfilling creative passions, both in the film and in life?
The filling creative passions.
Fulfilling.
Oh, the fulfilling creative passions. Well, they're both. Do you know what I think? I think that both of them were fundamentally inconsolable, and that's what fuels you. Because once you're okay, you stop creating, I think. You have to keep going. If you take a very extreme example to illustrate what I've just said, you take the great writer Primo Levi, who was in one of the concentration camps, who wrote, and as soon as he stopped writing and couldn't write anymore, he committed suicide, because it was the only way for him to survive. In a sense, and in a much milder way, Walt Disney was surviving that, creating all of those things that he created. He was surviving his childhood. He wouldn't have put it like that, but actually he's all the creators I know who keep on have this strange and fundamental inconsolability. That what I mean is that if they sit too long, the pain becomes too great.
The story on the surface is suggested that it's just about Mary Poppins. but as it became a movie, it was much deeper than that. Can you talk about the depth of the film?
Yes. To me, the film does something very interesting with time. We call the part that is set in Australia that is to do with her childhood flashbacks, but I don't experience them as flashbacks at all. I experience the movie as parallel time. I mean, if you consider the fact that we carry everything with us all the time, our child, the baby, whoever we were and are, is with us all the time. Of course, it's the building blocks of our personality. It's all inside us at all times, but we focus on the present moment. Well, then the film takes two parts of time, and you travel along those parallel lines into this kind of strange temporal perspective that leads you towards a meeting point which gives you the feeling that you get sometimes when you smell something you haven't smelt for years and years, a sort of whoosh of emotion, because you're not going back to somewhere and then coming back to the present, or going forward to somewhere and coming back to the present. You're experiencing it at the same time, and suddenly it all comes together and you understand it. And if only we could do that with our own lives. It's just too difficult. We can't. That's why I think it works. That's why I think that the filmmaker John Lee Hancock and the screenwriter Kelly Marcel did something with the raw materials, the actors, that was remarkable.
Thank you.